Let's get clear what my page is about. Let's see. Now, my page is about redirecting the narrative because for far too long we have allowed Europeans to set the narrative about who we are as a people. And it's time for us to change and to set our own narratives. So that's clearly what my page is about.
In order to
I
help
am
build
into,
various blacks communities.
just to show you some of the videos on my YouTube page. This is called Why Blacks Should Self-Segregate Black Politicians.
The planter aristocracy owned the best land, forcing the yeoman farmers to scratch out a living in the less fertile backcountry and mountain valleys that remained. Since they didn't own land, they could not hold political office.
Western land wasn't free, and the poor rarely had the funds to buy the parcel.
On this video, I speak of why blacks should self-segregate. I speak on what happens after slavery is that blacks had a lot of skills after slavery. Understand that whites, poor whites, who nomads, whatever they call them, had no skills, and they relied on slave hiring in order to farm their land, build their houses. This is evident by passing laws limited the amount of slave hiring that was allowed in various states like Carolina and stuff like that. So when blacks left slavery, we had a lot of skills and we built a lot of strong communities. So I speak on the Reconstruction process on this video. And I speak on how what got us in our current condition is that in 1913, Europeans created the Federal Reserve. And what happened was the Federal Reserve printed up $1 billion and gave it to white people. Therefore, our skills and labors became devalued because white people had started to begin to get credit at such a level that devalued our wages, right? Because if they're getting this money just printed and given to them, and we are here laboring for our money, getting paid hourly wages, they can print money faster than we can work for the money. So this, them giving and doubling the amount of money in the American supply and giving it to white people, it made everything that much more expensive because you have more money, so people are spending more, so the price is rising like we are dealing with currently inflation. And that's what happened with blacks, and they continue to give white people access to credit, right, which devalued our labor. So that's why you got to a certain condition where a lot of black people don't want to work for nothing and progress and gain nothing. So I speak about that, how the white people was treated and how them bringing them in as honorary white people, different Irish, different groups, use them as a tool against black people.
Sold by the federal government. Instead, they invaded public lands as trespassers, and the government often had to physically remove them. They became the dominant class of the early republic and the antebellum period that you've never heard of. America's version of English vagrants, squatters, and crackers.
Which meant they had less representation in both national and state governments. In addition, people who owned slaves were often allowed to include their slaves when calculating population, giving them a huge advantage in their state legislatures.
Now, the legendary Davy Crockett, believe it or not, was an outspoken advocate of squatters' rights. That's the real Crockett, not the legend.
Places like South Carolina, the large plant.
See, what you got to understand is squatter meaning white people did not have legal standing in America. Only the aristocrats that originally came from Europe had legal standing, right? Their standing came from them giving them that a certain power and whiteness in order to combat the growing strength of black people. This part of history we don't know and we don't understand. So that's what this video is about.
Slaves came, they flocked here.
The Union Army occupied Little Rock on September 10th, 1863. And when that happened, thousands of blacks started to pour into Little Rock.
In fact, a lot of Southern plantation owners were so mad they loaded up their slaves and they just drove them to Little Rock in their wagons and dumped them off. And they might have a little bundle of maybe some food and maybe a few belongings, but that's it.
They're liberating themselves. They're liberating themselves with their feet. They know Union troops are nearby. They know slavery never worked for them. So they're going to these places where they can begin to make sense out of life and to begin to live life as freed people.
A lot of things that are necessary to grow an economy and grow a community were not really available to Black people at that time, just post-Reconstruction. And the way that it was provided by was the formation of fraternal organizations.
Republicans in North Carolina were successful in part because of a third party called the Populist Party, made up of mostly white farmers fed up with the tough economic times. North Carolina populists joined up with Republicans to form what they called the Fusion Party. And in the elections of 1894 and 1896, the Fusion Party defeated the Democrats in sweeping victories statewide. That meant North Carolina now had a government that shared power between Black and white politicians, including a newly elected Republican governor. Together, they moved towards reforms that would favor Black Americans and working-class whites.
They existed because...
Understand this, that Blacks, when we got our freedom, we worked to assist poor whites in order to gain progress. But white people, right, made Black people fearful, made white people, other white people, poor white people, fearful of Black people capabilities, our work ethic, our ability to progress, right? So their insecurities made them go with the same white people who worked against them, right? And this is just one of my videos. I have other videos on here. Let me show you. See right here.
Gun ownership
I
has
have
been
this
intertwined
video
with the identity of America since the settlement of the 13 colonies. The Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution guarantees Americans' right to keep and bear arms.
You have rights too. You have rights too.
Don't you dare.
You have rights. You can't
Don't you dare.
You need the Constitution. You know that. I will shoot you with this Constitution. That's a threat. And so
First, asking Castile for his license and registration.
I have to tell you, I do have a firearm on me.
Don't reach for it, then.
I do not. You cannot. No, it is constitutionally owned.
The United States has a troubled legacy when it comes to protecting the lives of Black Americans. In 1868, the 14th Amendment was added to the U.S. Constitution to uphold the rights of African Americans. Sadly, this amendment has been overshadowed by an oppressive and violent history.
Don't reach for it, then. Don't pull it out. Don't pull it out.
Would this have happened if those passengers, the driver and the passenger were white? I don't think it would have.
He's licensed to carry. He was trying to get out his ID and his wallet out his pocket, and he let the officer know that he had a firearm and he was reaching for his wallet, and the officer just shot him in his.
I see that. You have a concealed carry permit. It's not concealed. Yes, you can see the weapon. It's right there.
Don't do it.
Okay. What are you afraid of?
Don't do it.
I'm not doing anything.
Do me a favor. Just please step out of the car. That's all we're asking you to do.
Oh, you're asking me to...
Yes.
Conceal your weapons, please.
No.
This is how we treat each other civilly. This is how we act.
No. Just
yes, we do.
Don't do it.
And drive away. I'm not going to bother anybody. No, you're hands not. On the seat.
Don't do this. Don't do it. Don't. Racism exists.
Young Black man with.
We have to be honest about these things. We have to be honest that this is a separate country. That's why I got this video saying the Constitution does not apply to Blacks, right? And using Amir Locke, Breonna Taylor, Lando Castro, using all these videos to show that is the truth.
A Shreveport, Louisiana police officer was arrested earlier this week on a charge of negligent homicide.
Then you have this video where
the reason why they
The Holocaust.
The Holocaust isn't about race.
Her co-host seemed taken aback.
No, it's not about
maybe
race.
ethnicity.
No, it's about
a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man.
Whoopi Goldberg was 100% correct. The Holocaust was not about race. In order for them to identify the Jews from any other group that they had to depict from, whether it's the Poles, the Russians, any other race, they had to have those Jews wear a significant identifying marker, such as a yellow star, a yellow 6-point star. You did not have to do that when you was dealing with racism in America. Europeans acted as if they don't understand what is ethnic and the difference between race. The truth is they understand ethnic cleansing because they speak on it consistently, right? When they speak on the Uyghurs of China, how the Chinese treat them, they don't call it a different race, they call it ethnic cleansing, right? What your witnesses is an attempt to steal Black people culture.
When the Germans came in March 19th in 1944, we were told we have to wear a yellow star and everybody has to have it on their clothing and nobody can go out without having it on, and if you are caught without having it on, then you would be punished.
Today's topic, where I'd like to talk about this infamous symbol used by the Nazis in their persecution of Jews, the yellow star. Jews in Holland were forced to wear stars in public beginning on May 3rd, 1942. Different stars were used in different parts of occupied Europe, Nazi-occupied Europe, and were imposed at different times. So the date is also relevant here. In this case, in Holland, the star was required after May of 1943 and 1942, but in other places it happened at different times. This is another star that we have in our collection, which may look more familiar with the German word Jude, Jew, in the middle, emblazoned in the center there. In this case, we know that this was a star worn by Julius Frohle, the grandfather of Howard Mayer, who was the second chairman of the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center. Today, I want to use these two stars as a starting.
Be clear, they had to use a star in order to identify them white people from white people. Oprah was 100% correct. That's what this video speaks of. We have to stop allowing other people to supply our media and our information. This is why we are so misinformed as a people. This video shows that white people are responsible for the drug epidemic in America.
Will kill 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 people during the course of his or her life. Thousands of people are killed or their lives are destroyed, their families are destroyed.
Research indicates that there's a strong correlation between regions of high opioid prescription rates and high overdose rates.
I mean, if you look at it, 4 of 5 injectable drug users started getting opioids, whether it be OxyContin, prescription or non-prescription pill taking. So there is a direct correlation between the two.
Annually, more than 214 million prescriptions for opioid pain have been given out, with more than 11 million people abusing their medication. But how did this problem get so catastrophic?
Johnson & Johnson's quiet domination of the opioid market. Explain how key Johnson & Johnson was and how this market and the epidemic developed simultaneously. How did they do it?
Sure. So the company's role was really multi-pronged. So on the one hand, they had their own opioid products that they were selling and they were marketing. And they had a whole sales force of folks who were going to doctors and encouraging doctors to prescribe those medications. But also, and this is something that I think that most people don't know about Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson had two subsidiaries that were responsible for manufacturing the majority of active ingredients in opioids that were marketed and sold in the United States, not just Johnson & Johnson opioids, but all sorts of opioids. So the way that they did this was back in the...
So while America talking about build a wall to keep the drugs out, they're really talking about build a wall to keep the drugs in, because America is one of the biggest producers of opiates. But yet you consistently try to frame the concept that blacks are the drug dealers. This is why we have to stop getting our media news from Europeans. See here. Let's see here. Okay. Assumption. This video is another video speaking how white people have changed the concept of violence to promote it to being black people while ignoring how violent white people are. Paradigm shift. A fundamental change in approach or underlying assumption. Whites calling blacks violent is a complete shift in reality. Let's be clear. That's a complete shift in reality. Understand the violence, the cruelty it took for slavery. Understand the cruelty it took to colonize Africa. Understand the cruelty white people had to inflict upon black people to maintain slavery for hundreds of years. Understand the cruelty white people inflicted on black people outside of the plantation to make a lot of black people fear leaving the cruelty of the plantation for fear that they will get worse from the white people outside of that plantation. Let's be clear about the level of violence white people had to maintain in order. We have to understand why people will portray us in the ways that they are. The evil that they do, they portray upon black people. We have taken them concepts on and we have started to believe them about ourselves. We have to stop that. I'm about to show y'all the black man. He's largest franchise owner for McDonald's. Right now he's suing McDonald's for racial discrimination. This is why I promote black people to build their own businesses and become self-sufficient. And it is also the reason why I tell black people to understand that you're not really worshiping God, mostly black people. Most black people religion is white people. Yes, I said that. Most black people religion is white people. And I say that is because you have faith that white people are going to deliver you from your condition. You have faith that white people will deliver you from your condition in spite of the fact that there's no evidence of it. So you have faith in them.
First speaker, Joe Pfeiffer, Managing Partner, Pfeiffer, Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. Go ahead, Joe.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this news event organized by my law firm, Pfeiffer, Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. Today, we filed a civil rights lawsuit on behalf of Herb Washington, a college track star at Michigan State University, former Oakland A's player, community leader, and one of the most notable success stories in Black American business. Herb is a bona fide Black American Business Hall of Famer, having amassed the largest number of McDonald's stores of any Black owner in U.S. history. You will hear from Herb Washington in a few minutes. His partner, Kevin Conway, will discuss McDonald's conduct in greater detail. The civil rights lawsuit filed today details how McDonald's redlines Black owners.
This is a day that I hoped would never have to happen. After 40 years in the McDonald's system, I always held out hope that they would live up to their promises and put an end to the two-tier system, one that is designed for white owners to flourish and grow, another designed to pigeonhole and oppress Black owners like me. I believe that McDonald's was going to do the right thing. They said they would. I believe that McDonald's was going to fix the rents disparity between Blacks and whites. I believe McDonald's when they said that they were going to fix the cash flow gap between Blacks and whites. I believe McDonald's when they said they would fix the sales disparity from Black restaurants to whites. I believe McDonald's when they said that Black owners could own restaurants in any community states. I believe that. However, the culture at McDonald's has not changed. They don't listen. Maya Angelou said it best. When they show you who they are, the first time, believe them. Great question. This has been over my history in McDonald's. For example, the very first restaurant that I got, inner city, next to a housing complex called Fight Square, upstate New York. 7 months later, I get another inner city store next to Fight Village. And I started to ask the question, why is it that if I can grow, why can't I go to the suburbs? We're talking about in the 80s. In the 80s, I started this question. When they show you who they are, the first time, believe them. And when I went to Cleveland and bought stores in Cleveland, Ohio, I immediately said, why is there only one Black person on the west side of Cleveland? And 30 years ago, or better, there was a big fight in Cleveland to get Blacks into the system. Can you believe today that we have this kind of system, that Blacks can't be on the west side of Cleveland? When they show you who they are, the first time, believe them.
So because this page is about us delivering the news and information to ourselves about what's really and currently existing. Understand Jim Crow has not left. It still exists in every aspect of America. They've never wanted to show it to you out front. We've always had to place a camera to it. We've always had to place an image to it. That was the whole purpose of King movement, was to do things where you can show who white people really are. Let people see who they are, get the cameras out. They can't help themselves. That was King's whole movement. King's success came off the fact that he played on white people's nature. He showed you who they really are. But to this day, you still refuse to listen. My page is a continuation of that message of showing you who these Europeans really are.